Hello, I'm Eben DeMarsh with the Trends Journal. It is a great honor today to be speaking with Larry Johnson, the former CIA analyst and author at Sonar 21. Today he's in Moscow. It's midnight there. It's about 2 p.m. here in Los Angeles. Larry, thank you for joining the Trends Journal today.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for hosting me again.
I was out running and I just thought I was thinking I want to describe a scenario for you, Larry. Okay,
Sure.
you're in the Russian army. You're a soldier and you're monitoring a radar, and suddenly you see four blips on the radar screen, and they appear to be Tomahawk missiles fired from someplace near the border of Ukraine. What would happen? What would Russia do in that situation? What kind of chain command? What would happen there? Because Russia said that these could be nuclear tipped, and it just seems like, I guess the question is, what would happen in that scenario?
Well, number one, people need to understand that the Tomahawk missile is a point missile. In other words, it's designed to cause specific damage to, say, a bunker or a particular foxhole, a particular building. It's not an area weapon. Andrei Martyanov, who has written 5 books now, his first book was called Losing Military Supremacy. So he's an American citizen, but he was in the Russian military, went through the military academy. Very accomplished man, but he knows the science of all this. He pointed out one refinery, a large refinery in Russia, and noted it would take 100 Tomahawk cruise missiles to destroy that one target. 100. Well, the United States doesn't have 100. We're talking right now the possibility that we could supply 20 to 50 to Ukraine. It's not going to make a difference. Now, the ground launch version. So they got three varieties. You got air launch, sea launch, ground launch. The ground launch version has to be reconfigured in order to carry a nuclear warhead. So in its current condition, it cannot carry a nuke. However, you're correct in noting that the Russians don't want to be in the position of having to trust that kind of judgment because it could be fatal. So they've made it very clear that if the United States chooses to supply these weapons to the Ukrainians via NATO, sell it to NATO, then NATO turns around and gives it to the Ukrainians. Number one, it's a weapon system that can only be operated by NATO forces or by U.S. personnel. Russia said that this would be crossing a red line, and they would treat it much more harshly in their response. I think we need to take the Russians at their word on that. I think they're quite credible. But Russia has very effective air defense, and even though these are low-flying cruise missiles that fly along the contours of the Earth's surface, they are, not subsonic. That means they fly around 500 miles per hour, not in excess of 1,300. And so Russia has air defense systems quite capable of shooting them down. But it still would mark an escalation, and it would mean more direct involvement because NATO personnel or U.S. military personnel would have to operate the launcher. It's nothing that you could train the Ukrainians to do overnight. It would represent direct involvement of the West. So, and Putin's made it clear that'd be crossing a red line. And if the West does it, do it at your own peril.
I remember during the Biden administration, one of the things, I think it was from a NATO official, and he said that Russia doesn't seem to really hold true to their red lines, at least when it comes to Ukraine. For example, like the long-range missiles, at one point, Russia said this would be a red line, or the F-16s provided by NATO. They also can carry nuclear-capable
Right.
missiles. And I don't know if they said quite I could be misspeaking here. That
Yeah,
maybe they didn't say it was.
this is the first time they've actually used the phrase crossing a red line.
Okay.
All the previous weapon systems, even talks of long range missiles. They haven't, they haven't fired any long range missiles. In fact, all the United States and Britain have supplied are short to medium range, intermediate range missiles. Like the Taurus probably has the longest range, and that's even, I think, about 400 miles. So it's not, it doesn't have great length. Russia's got such a decided advantage when it comes to the whole missile situation. Russia has 4 different variants, completely different missile systems that are hypersonic missiles, which means they fly at a speed of Mach 5 or greater, and they're maneuverable. And so the latest one that was introduced is the Oreshnik, meaning hazelnut. But they've got the Iskander, the Caliber, and the Kinshal. I think those are the other 3. West doesn't have a single one. Neither does Ukraine. So, and with respect to the F-16, they're really not using, Ukraine's not using them. One, because the pilots they did have that were trained have been killed by the Russians. And secondly, if those planes get anywhere near the Russian territory, they get shot down. So, Russia said, fine, bring it on. There's, the United States has continually shown up with, and the Brits as well, with Storm Shadows, the
Scalps from France.
Yeah, the Scalps out of France. So the Attackams, the HIMARS, the Patriot, and none of these systems, right? Like the Patriot, for example, is now operating at a level of only 6% effectiveness.
Wow.
Yeah. So, what are they going to do?
So we're in a position now where Trump, it's each week it seems like he takes a different position. Now it seems like he's back to negotiating with Russia. He wants to meet with Putin next week in Hungary. This is after indicating that he was interested in providing these Tomahawk missiles. And I think it was Keith Kellogg who told a conference that the U.S. could kick Russia's ass in a war.
Joe, you mean like the way we kicked the Houthis' ass?
Yeah.
You mean like the way we kicked the Afghans' ass? Oh wait, we lost that one, and we got driven out of the Red Sea by the Houthis. I mean, what kind of stupidity is this? Seriously.
But Trump knows that he says this, and he's not the only one who said it, because you had Whitaker, the ambassador to NATO, say something very similar to what Kellogg said. So this seems to be almost like an administration-wide position that we can kick Russia's ass if it got down to it. Ukraine's not losing. In fact, they may have the upper hand. Is that just a messaging ploy for Trump before meeting with Putin?
It's all it is.
So how could that change Putin?
Well, so what I was told tonight, with a friend, I will not specify which country, it's not Russia, but this individual is actually in contact with someone from the Trump administration that's close to the very top people in his administration, and just said that, hey, look, there is a lot more going on behind the scenes and between Trump and Putin than people realize, and is couched in being a very, very positive, that really what Trump and Putin are working on is weakening Europe, which, candidly, I think that's what Trump is doing by making Europe pay for these missile systems. If they want to sell them to Ukraine, go ahead, or give them to Ukraine, be his guest. But they're going to bankrupt them. He said, my friend said that on Vladimir Putin's birthday, Trump called and had like a 40-minute conversation with him, and the White House never publicized the call. So that took place, and so they may be really seeking a way to defuse it. Now, you're correct that Vladimir Putin is not going to back away. The demands on the table right now by Russia is the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Crimea. Those are all that territory belongs to Russia. Even if it's still currently occupied in part by Ukraine, it all belongs to Russia, and Russia is going to demand that. Russia will demand and require that NATO leave Ukraine and get out and not return. No exercises, no storing of military equipment, etc. Putin is not going to back off of any of that. That is the Russian position. No matter Trump can, stamp his feet, hold his breath till he turns blue, threaten him with more sanctions, as if there's any more sanctions to put on. But Putin really holds the he's in the driver's seat with respect to this.
So when Trump says he's meeting with Putin next week, will it be what could change? Russia hasn't changed their three key demands in ending the war. I mean, Russia and when Trump came out recently and said, I think it might have been even J.D. Vance who said that Russia was being unreasonable with their demands. Really, if you paid attention from the beginning, the demands stayed the same. And so I guess the question to you is, what could happen differently this time? What could Trump try? How could Trump try to spin it if this time when he meets with Putin and what's resolved?
He can come out and claim that they made progress, but he's not in a position to discuss it yet. The reality for Trump is Trump doesn't hold any cards. He has no leverage over Vladimir Putin. The best they can hope is that the U.S. is putting a lot of stock in hoping that they can get Putin on the U.S. side to work against China. Now, that's not going to happen either. So, but again, it's one of those vain hopes. They will meet and probably have some more candid discussions about where the actual military state is for Russia and what the projections are for ending the war. Russia would like to get an end right now. They would put a stop to their offensive if the United States would tell Ukraine, okay, you're taking everybody else out of Kherson, Zaporizhia, and whoever's left in Donetsk. Get them all out. Go back to your own borders on the west side of the Dnieper River. But if you don't do that, we're going to keep rolling forward, and they will. And they'll take other key territories, Dnipropetrovsk, Poltava, Sumy, Kharkiv. Those are four in particular that would be captured. So Putin's just waiting to see what hand the West is going to play. I could certainly see Trump wanting to put the screws to the United Kingdom because they played such a desperate direct role in Russiagate. They were really the major enablers of that.
But we all know that Trump, he knows about reputations. He knows he wants to be a leader that's seen, a strong leader, someone who gets things done. We know that he met Putin back in August. He said that if there wasn't any kind of resolution, he was going to slap Russia with even more sanctions. We see him even now in Gaza with the ceasefire deal. That's kind of, we don't know how long that'll last. Hopefully it does. Now he's putting himself out again to meet Putin for a second time. Mm-hmm. Do you see any risk for Trump? I mean, even politically, domestically, by meeting Putin twice and getting nothing out of it, if it just turns out to, we made progress and then Putin ends up the next night bombing or, carrying out a major offensive in Kyiv. Is Trump putting himself out and is he risking his reputation domestically with this effort?
Well, he would if he went in and stepped up the war, expanded the war against Russia. Yeah, then he'd be in violation. We've seen in the last couple of days, though, that it looks like he's even backing down on the support for the military prospects for Israel in Gaza. he seems to be, cooling those jets a little. Trump's got a problem right now. His America First agenda is being portrayed correctly, in my view, as an America Second agenda, with Iran or Israel being the number one important priority, and then sparking wars with Iran and further killing in Gaza. Look at what happened last last Thursday when Trump signed his Gaza peace deal. There wasn't anybody from Israel and nobody from the Palestinian side there to endorse it, sign up to it, etc. So this was the equivalent of holding a wedding, and you preside over the wedding, but there's no bride and there's no groom. You can call it a wedding, but it ain't a wedding.
It's an arranged marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could even say it's an arranged marriage, but they haven't even sealed the vows.
Yeah.
So, you didn't have Israel sign up and sign and commit itself on paper, nor did you have what's left of the Hamas leadership. So, this is going to devolve again into further violence. It already has, actually.
Yeah.
And Israel's not going to give up its quest to take all the Palestinian land and put settlers on it.
I mentioned before Sonar 21. You wrote this briefly. This is a recent article on Sonar 21. You talked about your time in Moscow. You're still there. You wrote, "I have only been in Moscow for less than 24 hours, and I have not been able to talk with a broad swath of people. However, after watching the local TV stations, it's clear that the war in Ukraine continues, not just because Putin wants it. An overwhelming majority of the Russian people recognize they are in an existential battle with the West, and, if anything, want the Russian government, meaning not just Putin, but the general staff, to pursue the war more aggressively."
Right.
Can you talk about that feeling and how you came to that conclusion on
Yeah, well, no, you just hear what people say. So there is Putin has come in for criticism of being too soft, too patient with the West. There are others like former President Medvedev, who is on the National Security Council with Putin, has talked about blowing them to hell and taking more violent action. So we'll see. What we've seen is a dramatic uptick over the last 7 weeks, going on 2 months, of the Russians dismantling the electronic infrastructure of Iran, killing and wounding upwards of 1,500 Ukrainian troops per day. And Ukraine, frankly, they can't sustain this kind of loss.
I want to now, if we could, just shift over to what's going on in Gaza and Israel. I know it's very late out there, Larry. I don't want to keep you up too long.
I just had an itchy eye.
So back to a serious topic. What's going on in Gaza, and what do you think about that ceasefire deal? Obviously, we know that the IDF carried out deadly strikes across Gaza. Still, obviously not at the level that they once were. Are you optimistic about this ceasefire deal, or is this something that reminds you of what happened in March or January when the first ceasefire deal came into effect?
Yeah.
Are you more optimistic this time than the previous time?
No. Again, the only hope for optimism is if the two contending parties, the Palestinians and the Zionists, sit down and negotiate. The Zionists have got to be persuaded to stop settling Palestinian territory and calling it their own. Well, they're not going to do that. The Palestinians want, they're being asked to disarm. Well, they're not going to disarm. So you've got an impasse right off the bat. And we've had now over 2 years of constant Israeli military action against the Hamas and there's 13 other Palestinian groups that are also fighting. Hamas is just the biggest one. As long as those two sides are firmly entrenched, they're not going to negotiate. Now, I think I could see the United States, if Trump really wanted to get involved and risk alienating his Jewish base, the Zionist base, he could come in right away and working with China and Russia, cut off Israel from all trade and all military supplies. Force it, you're saying you're going to be on your own. I don't think they want to do that. And so they're in a position that Trump could compel them to stop these military operations and then insert a peacekeeping force, a genuine peacekeeping force that will separate the Israelis from the Palestinians, allow the Palestinians then to elect a government and make sure that Israel stays out of that government. Because what Israel's done in the past is they were paying people to be social influencers, or they're paying people to act as propagandists. There's a peace deal to be had, but it's a matter that the biggest stumbling block are the settlers in Israel, and whether Trump wants to really put pressure on them. I don't think he does.
How about Netanyahu's own survival in Israel? You mentioned how Russians support the Ukraine conflict, the Ukraine war. The Israelis also, a lot of Israelis support what's going on, and they support Netanyahu's effort in Gaza. So Netanyahu also faces his own domestic pressure.
Right.
So do you see that as an influence, obviously, on Netanyahu going forward and the risks to the ceasefire?
Well, yeah, let's separate the two items. Netanyahu is not wildly popular, to the contrary. However, the mission that he set forth of expelling the Palestinians, not talking to the Palestinians, that enjoys widespread popularity across Israel. Only a few of the settlers over in the Hasidic community, they're the most likely to oppose Zionism. But really, there is that central part of Jerusalem where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is, and others that the Jews have been prefer to call them Zionists. The Zionists living there have been trying to restrict Christian access as well. So it's been the United States is in a position to bring this thing to a halt immediately, and we don't do it. Why? Because Trump is completely compromised by the Jewish lobby.
Did you see his comments in Israel when he called out Miriam Adelson and her influence over the White House?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what you thought of that when you saw a video of that? Was that surprising to you that he was so naked about it, or was that expected?
He was just quite expected. He's the best. The Zionists say he's the best president money could buy because they bought him.
Now I want to shift, Larry, while I have you, to something closer, at least as far as in the vicinity, in the hemisphere, Venezuela.
Yeah.
And we have Trump saying today that they don't want to F with us, meaning Maduro, or he said something along the lines of Maduro doesn't want to F with the United States militarily. Obviously, that's escalating very quickly. We went from position the ships in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico. I think we have 10,000 troops there now, bombing boats. Now Trump was talking, or at least there were leaks from the administration that they were considering striking Venezuela as a country. And now we have war talk coming out of Trump. I mean, what if you were Maduro's, advisor? What would you be telling Maduro right now?
Hunker down. Maduro's tried to reach out to the United States diplomatic channels, and this project with Trump to destroy Maduro and take control of Venezuela started in 2018, so it's a 7-year-old covert action. If you go in and look at the state of that whole area. Let's recognize that the U.S. troops will be hard pressed to get up into Caracas if they land any troops on the ground. Last I heard there were only 4,500 Marine Expeditionary Unit personnel. Now, if it's up to 10,000, they've doubled it. That would be a very hard-fought battle, and because there are multiple ambush points going up and down that road. What Trump has done is his actions are criminal, in my view, and I say criminal because you only fire and attack a boat. In this case, these are boats, not ships. Boats are smaller craft. If they are firing at you or posing an immediate threat to a naval ship, like jamming it or ramming it, well, neither of those was the case here. They're claiming that they got drugs on board. Okay, fine, they got drugs on board. Board the boats, take the drugs, and arrest the people. That's what you do. In this latest attack, they failed to kill the people on board. So now they were picked up by the U.S. Navy. They're alive. Now there's a basis for a civil action against the United States for violating their civil rights, for trying to kill them. So this is an extremely foolish policy by Donald Trump, and one that really undermines his claim to be a president of peace and wants law and order. All he's doing is he's acting in a lawless fashion, and that's what's dangerous about this.
If you saw where we are right now, and you saw into a crystal ball back in January, would you be surprised with the way the world is right now, or is this something that you're surprised at how bad it is right now? Is that fair to say?
I actually held out hope in January because Trump was given a golden opportunity that he really could have become the peace president. He could have put an immediate end to the war in Ukraine by cutting off all U.S. military assistance to Ukraine. He could have put an immediate end to the genocide in Gaza by cutting Israel's military supplies off and helping lead an economic embargo to force them to cooperate. He didn't do that. Now he's going to look for a fight with Venezuela. I remember it wasn't too long ago that he was talking about possibly invading Panama and then taking control of Greenland. So, Trump's been making some pretty wild claims. And now I think we have to take him seriously that he very well could mean some of it.
I guess my last question to you, Larry, is where do you see the off-ramps for all these things? As far as when it comes to Israel and Russia, let's leave Venezuela out of that question because we're not at war with Venezuela, even though we're doing those strikes. Let's just focus on Gaza and Ukraine. What are the off-ramps, and do you think we'll take them?
No. Whatever off-ramps there are, we're not going to take them. Russia is going, with Ukraine, Russia is going to end up ultimately capturing Odessa. They are going to push all of Ukrainian forces back west of the Dnieper River. And in the course of this, they'll probably acquire 5 more pieces, 6 more pieces of major Ukrainian territory, and it will make it Russian territory. The Ukrainians, there's not a lot they can do. They got manpower shortages, they got equipment shortages, and they don't have an easy way to replace either. They're going to be very much dependent upon whatever help the United States and the West can give them. And frankly, I don't see the West or the United States lining up to say, okay, yeah, let's see if we can flush another, $100 billion down the toilet. Not going to happen. So there's no off-ramp there. And the fact is, I mentioned earlier, with respect to both the Palestinians and the Zionists, there are no off-ramps there either. And so the killing is going to be renewed. And the Hamas leadership, they've taken some losses, but they've still got fanatical supporters that are willing to take a risk and die.
Well, Larry, I mean, that's where we are in the world, huh?
Yeah,
I mean,
cheery stuff there, Ed.
curious. Now, are you gonna what's on the agenda now in Moscow? Are you going to be going out at all? Or are you going to do
Yeah,
you want
yeah.
to talk
No,
about that at all?
I'll be sticking around Moscow, meeting with a variety of business leaders, political leaders, military officials, just getting their take on how they see the situation. Trying to talk to them. I don't think the Russians fully appreciate how bad their public diplomacy sucks. They do a really lousy job of reaching out to Americans.
Hmm.
So I'm going to encourage them to, think long and hard about getting their public relations act in order.
Yeah, I mean, Medvedev seems like he's the one who's been their chief spokesman, and a lot of times he's almost like I mean, he's kind of like a Trumpian type figure in Russia, really
Yeah, yeah.
confrontational, and I mean, his stuff goes viral. But it seems like if you were asking me who would be the Russian spokesman, a lot of times I would say it's Medvedev. You know,
No,
but
he's unfiltered. That's for sure.
But anyway, Larry Johnson, former CIA analyst, author at Sonar 21. Everyone check it out. We'll have a link below. Larry, thank you for joining the Trends Journal.
Hey, Ed, my pleasure. Thank you.